Another edition of Behind the Lines presented by TheLines.com. I'm Eli Hershkovich, joined every week by Christian Cipollini, BetMGM Sportsbook trading manager. Of course, this episode presented by BetMGM and TheLines.com. And Christian, last week in Week 8, we saw home teams go 11-5 against the spread. Best week for home teams this season and the most home covers in a single week, dating back to Week 12 of 2022. One of those home covers included the Commanders having a walk-off Hail Mary touchdown from Jaden Daniels to Noah Brown. Tyreek Stevenson probably deserves a Venmo from Daniels and Brown, or just one of them, depending on how Washington wants to cover it. But how did BetMGM handle the result, and what was the swing with the Commanders' walk-off?
Yeah, so that was not the outcome the book wanted. We were comfortable at the moment, thinking that the Bears had won it. That was the outcome we wanted. Although that game it didn't end up being a huge swing. What we had going in our favor this week was the Bears were 2.5-point favorites going into Sunday, basically assuming Jaden Daniels wasn't going to play. We had a lot of bets being placed on the Bears at that point, thinking that if Jaden Daniels wasn't going to play, that line would go to 3 through that key number. So we ended up taking a lot of action on that, and then once Jaden Daniels was in, we took a lot of public money on the Commanders -1. So we kind of were able to wash it a bit, although the Bears were the preferred side for us. So we would have liked that. But yeah, it didn't end up being too bad, but only because of the injury news.
We talked about Offensive Rookie of the Year odds a couple weeks ago. Jaden Daniels, now the heavy favorite over Caleb Williams after knocking off the Bears in Week 8. And speaking of Washington, looking ahead here, Commanders 3.5-point favorites on the road at the Giants this week. Total of 43.5. Short week for New York as they lost to the Steelers on Monday night. That total going over. And speaking of overs, 12-4. We saw the total go over in Week 8, the best week this season and the most overs in a single week since Week 2 of last year. And just going back to that Giants-Steelers game, Daniel Jones, 1-16 now straight up in primetime games in his career. The Giants and the Jets, 4-33 straight up in night games since 2019. We'll see the Jets in primetime this week on Thursday night, 2-6. New York, a 2-point favorite up from a round of pick'em on Monday afternoon against the 6-2 Texans on Thursday Night Football. Total of 42. While Houston coming into this game with a sizable advantage from a record standpoint, the Texans tied for the 7th fewest yards per play over the last 3 games. Nico Collins out for all of those, and Stephon Diggs, his status is unknown for this game, dealing with a knee injury. So Houston potentially down their top 2 wide receivers against the Jets. And over that 3-game stretch, New York 8th in yards per play. What kind of action are we seeing for Thursday Night Football, Christian?
Yeah, so probably a bit of a surprising line to most people, especially how the Jets looked last week, losing the Patriots. They opened up as 1-point favorites. They're up to 2 now. Obviously, some of that stems off of the Stephon Diggs news. Majority of our money so far has been on the Texans. It'll be interesting to see where we end up shaking up because, I mean, you mentioned Daniel Jones has played 18 primetime games, which is crazy, but the New York teams are always in primetime, and when they are, we do tend to take New York money in those instances. I'm not sure if the sour taste from last week I'm not sure how that's going to play with as much from the public because we do end up taking more bets, but I think we will be more leveraged on the Texans despite Diggs' ACL.
Yeah, and you said it off the top in your explanation. Houston getting the majority of the money so far. It is early in the week, but I would assume bigger bets being placed on New York, just considering the money line shift.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll probably see that more from the public side as we get closer. I think probably what's the more interesting thing here is that although we have taken more Texans money, more of our sharper, smarter money has so far come on the Jets, which is a bit surprising, but it might be off that injury news and it being a short week.
Yeah, and we'll see if New York has any spirit left, any hope to save their season with the NFL trade deadline coming up, and maybe Devontae Adams gets traded twice in 1 year. But speaking of other NFL news, Joe Flacco replacing Anthony Richardson as the Colts starting quarterback ahead of Sunday Night Football in Minnesota. Indianapolis down from 6-point road underdogs to 5.5, I believe, since this recording started, Christian, here on Tuesday, October 29th. I have seen some books move down to 5, so maybe BetMGM is one of them here in the coming days. What's the difference from Anthony Richardson to Joe Flacco for you against the spread?
Yeah, that point and a half is probably about it. Point and a half, 2 points. Some of this, there was a little bit of rumblings that Richardson might be benched. There was a question asked, and he said he wasn't sure, so that was a little bit baked in. It is surprising that Joe Flacco at his age is still worth a couple points to this line, but you seen it right there in that line movement. We were at 6.5. We're down to 5.5 now, but I'd guess it will probably go down to 5, potentially even down to 4.5 as we get closer to game time. So far, though, we have taken more Vikings money, and I do expect that to continue. Although I do actually think Flacco will help us get more Colts money. As of right now, more Vikings money, but I do think that will stay that way. We'll probably want the Colts.
Vikings have dropped 2 games in a row, but obviously still in the thick of things when it comes to the NFC postseason picture. Indianapolis, though, I don't know. Maybe we do see, or maybe you guys do get bets no matter what if Richardson had been the starting quarterback this week, just considering the Colts are an NFL best 7-1 against the spread. Christian, between these 2 primetime games, any player props stand out so far?
Yeah, so as we're recording this, the Joe Flacco news happened very recently. So far I haven't seen too much in that game. For the Texans-Jets one, I have seen bets based on injury news there from Stephon Diggs as well. So we've seen some Tank Dell overs, and we've seen some Joe Mixon rushing yards, probably under the assumption that they'll probably be forced to run the ball a little bit more, and Tank Dell being basically the main pass catcher now in this offense.
Looking at one of the bigger games on the early slate for Sunday afternoon, the 5-3 Ravens hosting the 5-3 Denver Broncos, and Denver coming off back-to-back wins at New Orleans against Carolina, so not too much to show for it overall, really, this season, not just over the 2-game stretch. And Cleveland snapping Baltimore's 5-game winning streak on Sunday as 7.5-point home underdogs, with Jameis Winston replacing Deshaun Watson at quarterback after he tore his ACL. And the Ravens, 9.5-point favorites against Denver at BetMGM, total of 44.5. Baltimore with the league's highest offensive success rate, and they're allowing the lowest rushing success rate defensively. So you would think if the Broncos have any chance in this game, it's going to hinge on Bo Nix's shoulders, literally and figuratively. What do bettors think so far?
Yeah, so far it's been mostly Ravens bets. That game you mentioned last week, Ravens-Brown, was actually our best outcome of the week. The Browns winning outright was by far our best one. We'll need that most likely in this one too, for the Broncos to come and win this one, or at least cover. Because as of right now, it's all Ravens. I expect that to continue, but the Ravens corners looked very bad. Jameis was able to tear them up, so we're hoping that maybe we get some Broncos bets. We have a lot of Colorado bettors out there, and their team's 5-3, so hopefully some enthusiasm that we can maybe get it on the other side. But as of right now, it's all Ravens.
Worth noting, too, Broncos have a top 5 pass defense, so that could very well come into play in this huge, underratedly huge AFC game. As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up with BetMGM yet, use promo code THELINES, that's the lines one word, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code THELINES. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You'll then receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure to use bonus code THELINES when you sign up. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, and 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire within 7 days. In partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code THELINES and get your $1,500 first bet offer today. Looking at a big NFC matchup, specifically in the NFC North. For the first time all season, the Lions are tied for the second shortest odds to win the Super Bowl, tied with actually the Baltimore Ravens at plus 650 at BetMGM. Lions are favored to win the NFC at plus 300. What's the liability like before we get into Lions-Packers for Detroit to win it all?
Far and away our worst outcome. I think I've mentioned it on this show before. Every single week, when we look at a team that we don't want to win, it's always the Lions. They're by far our biggest liability, as you mentioned, into the second favorite now to win it all. Some people got it at a good number. I mean, this is still a pretty decent number for them. But yeah, they are our second most bet on team when it comes to futures. So the Chiefs still do have more bets, but the Chiefs have been the favorite since we opened. So people haven't been able to get as good a price there. But yeah, we are not Lions fans at the book this season.
So looking ahead to Sunday here, 6-1 Detroit, a 3.5-point favorite, minus 105 against the 6-2 Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love, his groin injury is reportedly not to be too serious. He's not expected to be out for the long term, but the knee injury, that's kind of the underrated storyline, at least for me. He seemed to be bothered by that in the first half against the Jags before he was taken out because of the groin injury. So early in the week, how have bettors responded to the news?
Yeah, so that injury isn't going to help our case here at all because we were going to take Lions bets no matter what. And the fact that there's, a little bit of injury question marks, it does seem like Jordan Love's going to play and probably will be okay. But that's not going to help us to get bets on the Packers. So we've already taken an overwhelming amount on the Lions, and I expect that to continue.
What about overall on the slate? Anything else that bettors should be aware of?
Yeah, nothing that's initially coming to mind. I mean, the Panthers being 7.5-point road dogs to a 2-6 team is probably a bit significant there. We've taken Saints money. I expect that to be one of our probably least bet on games. And then into Monday night, Bucks Chiefs will be another one. We'll be very heavy on the Chiefs. So we'll want the Bucks. It's another high point spread, so we'll need to get something there because those primetime games can be ones that really swing the book in different directions. So that'll be a big rooting interest.
Yeah, I'm assuming BetMGM profited from the Raiders' backdoor cover on Sunday afternoon against the defending Super Bowl champs. But overall for you, any bets that you're interested in with the games that we discussed or any others?
Yeah, so the first one that I have is one that we discussed a little bit earlier. Is going to be Commanders 3.5. I usually don't like to take road favorites, but this Commanders team has looked very good this entire season. And despite last week having to win on a Hail Mary, they had plenty of opportunities where they could have and probably should have scored, not even getting to that position. So I do think this Giants team is not capable enough to hang on there. So I do like them at minus 3.5 here. And if I'm going to pick one more, I'll probably also go with the Lions on this one just because of the fact that they've been steamrolling teams. And with those injury question marks to the Packers, at this point, I'm not as sold on them. And just the fact that the Lions have been crushing every team, I'll ride with the public on this one and say that we'll go with the Lions.
That Giants play is an absolute plug your nose special. I may have to plug my nose and bet New York. We'll see later in the week. You can find my best bets column over at thelines.com and all of my bets in our Discord channel. The link is free in the top right-hand corner over at thelines.com. But Christian Cipollini, trading manager over at BetMGM Sportsbook. Always appreciate the insight, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. Good luck to everyone this week.
And thanks to everyone who has watched and listened to this edition and all of our episodes of Behind the Lines presented by BetMGM, NFL Week 9 edition. So long, everybody, and good luck with your NFL Week 9 picks.